All right.
Okay, it is 7:16 on Wednesday, October 16th, calling this meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Terry O'Connor.
Beth McFarland.
Tommy Grant.
Brady Oxender.
Tiffany Southern.
Rainey Palmer.
J.P. Martin.
Okay.
J.P. Martin for the recording. Here him.
We are going to get right into, so here's the deal. The village is putting together their budget for next year. And so we have been asked, you know, what we can do, as with most things, is make recommendations. There are a couple of things that we've been talking about for a while. And I know that we have made council aware that we've been talking about these things. And so what we're hoping to do today is just effectively come to some agreement, knowing that we do not control the budget. We have no say in the purse strings at all, other than we have the ability to make recommendations. So we know that there are some parkland funds still available. We know there's none. Oh, Eric told me today that he thought there were still some. We know that there's hopefully that there's a little bit of money that has come in from the state government, and we're hoping on a little bit more money from the federal government. And then there are things outside of that. Those funds are outside of the normal budgeting process. The Mary Yost Fund is outside of the normal budgeting process. So what we're talking about now is effectively, do we want to request spending some of Minerva Park taxpayer dollars on things that we have been discussing? And so I think the three things that are close to, you know, that we've had enough discussion on are disc golf, bat houses, and then, you know, we had begun a conversation about playgrounds, and members of the community have talked about playgrounds. And so it's knowing that the village does not have much money at all. Do we want to make recommendations in the hopes that some of our projects can be at least discussed, if not included, in council's next budget? So outside of those three that I said, is there anything else that folks think is ready to actually in the next calendar year try to be appropriated?
That's a bug.
Oh, okay.
These were like the top ones when we did that ranking, right?
Yeah, they were. I mean, when we did the ranking, other things that were up there were like sidewalks and curbs, right, which are being addressed in other ways. There was like the tunnel safety was about the middle of the list. I can probably pull it up if we want to talk about everything, but some of the things we never really got around to discussing in any.
Yeah, I think we chose the top three ones. I think we really kind of discussed.
And so at this point, the question is, do we actually want to ask for, you know, for the village to fund any of these things?
Or which one's in priority, or, I mean, I don't know how you guys want to do it, but, and if there's other things, like you said, that we're missing, is there something that, the issue that we've had last year was, you know, we talked about, again, all of these things, and what are we told? We don't have, there's no funding for these particular line items. So this is the time in which they kind of go to all of us and say, okay, what street projects are we looking at? Whether it's, you know, crack ceiling or, you know, geese stuff, fountains, you know, those, all of that kind of stuff is, you have to address it. If we don't address it, then it's just pulling it from the general fund in July or August is pretty difficult to do. Well, I shouldn't say difficult, but it's a lot more, definitely not as easy. So right now is the time that if you're thinking about, do we just want to ask for $5,000 to potentially do something in the playground? You don't have to decide today that we want a new swing set or we want this or that, but if we don't ask for X amount of dollars, then it's just not there. So even like the mulching of the playground. I mean, that's something that, again, it may sound minimal, but it's not. I mean, $500 is just something that we have to make sure that we put a line item in there for X amount of dollars. We've talked about, I've talked about over the last couple years doing regular mulch versus rubber mulch. And there's benefits to, you know, some people don't like the rubber, some people don't like this. I almost every single year we've had to go through and do basic mulching. So the rubber is a lot more expensive, but it's a lot less maintenance, which if there's anything that you guys get tired of me probably saying is anything that's less maintenance is beneficial. We have a very small team that, you know, that we have that can fix things and do things. So it doesn't magically spread itself. So they come, they dump it, and that's that. So anyways, if that's something you guys are interested in, I mean, we don't have to even specifically say, I mean, yes, you can say, we want to do a recreational, you know, if we could ask, and maybe this is a good way to do it, I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas. Like we want to make sure, you know, disc golf is probably gonna be X. And then maybe we wanna try to add $2,500 or $5,000, whatever. For some sort of equipment or, you know, just something in the playground areas or whatever. We can try to see if it's not going to be a parkland fund and they might have to create it in, if we don't have a line item, they could always try to create another account number. Again, that's all on them, but they might be able to do something for planning and zoning project, you know, whatever. Council, of course, still has to approve it, but it would be something that came from here. But like a parkland type fund, or maybe we can add just money back into that fund. And that was cleared out when we did the fountains. The rest of it was cleared out when we did the shelter house, the concrete in the building, and then we did benches over the last couple of years. Benches, trash cans, things like that. So there's, and I'm sure I can get more specific, but the big things were the fountains and the shelter.
Okay. So
if there's a little bit left, that I'm not aware of.
okay. I will say on the playground, as someone who's got kids who love playgrounds, Minerva France has taken my kids from the village playground. And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? Like being that there's no connector, we've got to drive to whatever playground we go to. And so we go to the 2 playgrounds at Minerva France that are big and new and nice. So I think that instead of trying to improve our playground in the near term, making steps to maintain our playground in the near term would be a better spend. Like we have a really big, cool public playground in the village right now.
Got 2
it's
of
just
them.
behind.
Hawthorne too.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing with basketball courts.
Right.
There's like 13 hoops. It's the most hoops in the tri-state area.
Right.
So that's my thought would be.
It is nice for the little kids over in that area to be able to just walk down the swings or something instead of all the way over there. So,
Right.
I mean, they'll still get used.
And so my thought is something along the lines of like, let's maybe recommend, if it's not already in the budget regularly, you know.
It's not. I
Okay.
mean, as of right now, there's anything that I do at the playground that I'm gonna have to ask for.
Is that thing still safe?
Yeah.
The little rocking horse thing? Did those ever like?
If you're under 100 pounds, it doesn't go.
Do we have the ability to plan forward, I wonder, and start to attempt to budget $10,000 a year for the next
Right.
5 years?
Restock the parkland?
Are we allowed to carry it?
I don't know, it's just a thought
It's just,
process.
you
Yeah.
can, I mean, it's kind of like this, when we've started putting together money, when we had the EMS, each year we would take X amount of dollars and put it in that fund, and then we would carry that over each year and continue to put money into that particular fund. So there are things like that that you can do, or just rebudget, rebudget that with, because we did that with the geese stuff. That was just a line item, that wasn't just into one specific.
I actually like that idea, Tommy. Having.
Just a planning for it, like, hey, it's not the best, but it's still functional and reasonable.
Right. But even if we, like you said, if we could put X amount in there, and it's kind of like, we're trying to do that with the pool too, just putting X in it each year.
So that you don't end up
So
with a big bill, you've got a little.
So-
in 5 years, you have X.
Cushion.
You have a little bit, yeah.
So what about a request to have additional funds put into whatever landscaping
Potentially.
line item we currently have?
Okay.
just to pay when the bulk mulch order comes in for the village, to try to just remulch the playground, and then look into creating a line with some small amount of funding in the first year to be used for any like legit deferred maintenance on the playground, like the swing broke.
Right.
It could be pulled from-
Rocking things are probably getting to a point at some point
Right.
soon, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
be forced to replace those. So to be able to have a, like you said, a maintenance,
Yeah.
some type of
Right.
fund.
And so if
kinda
we
keep
could,
moving forward
yeah,
with
if we
those
could
things.
get, cause that, again, the whole thing is wood and metal, right?
Yeah.
So if we could get mulch put into the landscaping budget and consider that landscaping, right? Then on top of that, $3,000 to $5,000 or something for a playground.
Are you thinking like a playground specific funds?
Yeah, that's what,
And
yeah.
putting 3 to 5,000 every year?
That would be the
Or-
hope. I mean,
And then at the
yeah,
end of 2 or 3 years, you would have a couple, yeah.
yeah, you'd have enough to
Do
maybe
something.
put in a new installation or, how does that?
Or taking care of if one of the swings breaks or something like
Yeah.
that.
Right, and if you've got a budget there already, right?
But that, it seems like the mulch, since that's a regular thing that happens every year, you kind of know about it, that should go into like a
Automatic.
village maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and-
with the other beds of mulch or whatever.
Yeah, that would be my thought, is if you're doing a bulk purchase for mulch, just
But then they're
Include-
calculate that footage and allocate funds for it.
for equipment, so equipment be different than.
Right,
Yeah,
because at some point, I mean, even like a basketball hoop or something like that goes out, those are not cheap.
so what, do you have a
So would those be
landscaping
part of
budget?
the
Is that,
same one?
what would it,
Would we think of the like, would we need to allot a higher amount if we need to think basketball hoops and equipment?
I think it's just equipment in general.
So they would, all recreation equipment would
All
all like
recreation.
kind
Yeah.
of fall under that.
That's what I mean, that's what I would think. And the pool itself, I think, would be considered the pool, not
Yeah.
necessarily for,
We do have a lot of basketball hoops.
right? Good news is we only have to pay for 2 of them.
Yeah.
There's one at the pool too. It's kind of crooked.
Yeah, that one's,
That one gets a lot of use though.
It does.
Surprisingly so.
it's always being used.
so, do you know offhand, Tiffany, what fund you guys pull from to buy mulch?
Mulching fund, no.
I'm gonna put that in quotes.
Mulching fund, yeah.
Building grounds maintenance.
It's probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume it's more of like a ground maintenance.
So we can make that request, and then someone during the budgeting process can do the calculation and figure out about what
Right.
reasonably they would
We
need
have
to
the,
ask
or
for.
we have the bid, we have the bills from the last couple of years and just
Perfect.
take it from that
Yeah.
and see what
So
that's
then
for.
we would want to create a recreation maintenance and improvement fund,
Yes.
recreational equipment.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. I know I got off topic, but just thinking about that, and then I still think you need to discuss the other 2
Yeah.
major items, like do you want to do those, do you not want to do those? Do we want to look for grants?
I mean, that way, if you came up with a grant, then you wouldn't have to pull from the fund.
Right.
Right, but you would still have that sitting there growing, or it would contribute to, like, if you had a grant, some ancillary things that the grant wouldn't cover, then that fund could.
Yeah, shift things around. And so what do we want to, in year 1, what do we want to ask for the recreational equipment maintenance and improvement fund? 5,000? And then it's kind of like, with 3 members of council here, the strategy kind of goes out the window of like, let's ask for 5 and then maybe they'll give us 2.5.
You have to ask Dad what's
but-
okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and this is all going to Jeff, you know,
Yeah.
before it gets to you guys
It
either.
may be that it sounds great now, but then when I see all the other numbers, it
Right.
sounds different. So I think 5 is reasonable.
What can you buy with $5,000?
Nothing but.
Well, not the first year, right? But
Well, I'm just kind of thinking, okay.
But if the chain on a swing breaks,
Yeah.
you can certainly replace that swing within the 5,000 without saying we can't afford it and it sits empty. And then you've got 4,500 next year, and you add another 5 to it. Now what can you do with 9,500? Now you're getting there. And again, in the near term, the Minerva France playground will always be the shiny new playground for the next 5-6 years. So if we can get by with just mulching,
It's just one of those
Then
things,
that's-
like large
that's-
capital projects, we usually have to get grants or
Right.
borrow, or we get something from. But
And
when
if,
it comes to
and I'll tell you right
little
now,
stuff, we've got to plan in advance.
I'm already having conversations with our state senator and with our state representative about the next capital cycle, because that's the way that these jobs work. And so we got $250,000 of free money for walking path improvements.
Can you, this is random, this has nothing to do with what we're talking, I guess it has everything to do with what we're talking about, but will they ever do anything to just doing, how specific do you have to be to where you could just say Parks and Rec, or, I know what I'm trying to say, but to where you can do multiple, like, walking paths and all of that is great, don't ever get me wrong, but when you can use it for things like redoing the playground or
The pool.
Like where's the
something.
So there are different buckets, right?
Right.
The amphitheater we got through the Cultural Facilities Commission because it was not seen as a recreational thing, it was seen as a cultural enhancement.
Right.
Because of that, the Cultural Facilities Commission has certain hoops you have to jump through.
Right.
Their hoop is that you have to have a 50% local match.
Okay.
So this project, so knowing we were coming back for something else, you don't want to do the same project twice in a row, especially if you haven't even started to do the project yet.
Right.
So I thought walking paths, and by saying we're doing Minerva Park, what was it, walking trail improvements, anything you walk on is a walking trail, right? If we were to restripe the roads, that would be a walking trail as long as we put a walking line. So by being that wide open, it gave us a lot of freedom.
Okay.
And then by requesting money through the Department of Natural Resources, the hoops they have you jump through are you get 100% of your money with no requirement for a match, but it has to be open to the public during reasonable hours.
Okay.
So walking trails always are. A playground always is. And so we could, if you add a fun word, like Minerva Park Playground Complex, or playground facilities, we could request money for the playground, the shelter, the basketball court, because that is facilities. And anything then that would connect them, like if we needed to repave that section of road, we could get away with it.
Okay.
So
I think that's
so
what
the answer
my-
to your question is the reason it's so specific is so that
right, you have to be specific enough, but I've also been doing this long enough to remember to make things also as vague as possible.
Correct.
And so
Use a
probably,
lot of the word improvements.
exactly.
Specifically vague, yeah.
I like maintenance and improvements, I mean.
Well, I mean, if you just maintain something, you're still improving it because it was broken before it needed maintained, right? And so seeking funds for playground improvement right now, to me, seems like where we should be going in the next capital cycle. And that will start in January of '26.
So if we said recreation equipment improvements, could that open it up?
You're going where I'm at, yeah.
To open it up to, like, if you wanted to put things along the walking paths, like.
Well, so we've got two different funds here, right? There's the state capital bill,
Right,
and that money, comes with its strings, and then we've got what we're trying to do now. And what we're trying to do now is we put money aside, and then if council wants to just pull that money out and put it in whatever they want, they can. But hopefully they don't. And so if we create a fund title that helps council understand what we want this used for, that's our goal today. In a year and a half, if we can get other funds, we have a time clock of 2 years to spend those as long as we can play in that sandbox.
that next
And we could
cycle-
easily move this money that we've been putting aside at that point for 2 years into that project if we needed to.
so the state capital cycles in 2 years, but you have to apply for it ahead of time, but
Yeah.
it'll be released in 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what, Senator DeMora was elected in January of '23.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And that's when I had my first conversation with him about walking trail improvements in Minerva Park. Then in January of '24, he started working to get that in a bill that ultimately passed in June of '24.
So have we, and we have the one, we're expecting the money next year-ish. The
Which,
250,000.
the 250,000, Eric has the paperwork, so, and that money flows sooner than bureaucracy would have.
And that is strictly walking paths.
It is trail improvements.
Okay, so I guess my first question with this being planning and zoning, is that something you guys are wanting to discuss priorities? Or is that something you want council to move forward? Or is that something you guys want admin to, is that something you guys want to try to take on in here as far as priorities go?
I think that's a.
Code would say that we should be approving any plans for whatever is decided.
So I think that's where I'm going with this. I think if this body is interested in doing that, this is the time in which we know it's coming, we know where we're going. I feel like the conversation should be, okay, here's a map, these are the top 5 places that I feel like we should be going, what do you guys think? And you guys push it forward because you know it's coming.
Sure. I mean, my conversations with the senator in getting the funds were that it was my hope that we'd be using it for Park Lane, Minerva Lake Road connector. So that's a conversation that has so many different
So
variables in it.
The issue with that is, and I'm just gonna say it.
I'm sorry, I was trying to bring us back to the other topic. Sorry. I thought you were done.
Oh, no. So the issue with that is the only way to get a connector is a bridge. Unless you do what I'm trying to do, which council is now aware of, is we would be modifying the lake a little bit. But we're talking that's gonna be 2026 or 2027. You're not gonna have the funds to do it by then. So I'm just pre-warning you. That's a conversation that I think, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, but I'm saying that a bridge is like $1 million.
Yeah, if we wanted to do that, I would just get the funds reappropriated and we can draw them down when we need them.
So we have to look at that.
Yeah.
But if we could get together a list of like the top 3 places that we think that we could do walking paths and be able to use those funds. And I'm not in disagreement with this because that's something in a totally different project that's already being not drawn up because it's only going to go to 30% because in order to do the lakes, 30% has to be engineered to apply for a permit. And that takes about a year. Just that permit. And again, we're only going to be at 30%. There are no drawings, there is just discussion of what we want the drawings to look like at this point. And that is a huge part of the drawings that are gonna come out is how can we not spend $1 million on a bridge?
We have to, so the 250,000 we have to spend before June 30th of 2026. If I know in March that we're not going to spend the funds before then, I'll get them reappropriated and we get another 2-year time clock.
Okay.
So I'm not,
You're on
we
that,
have
okay.
this money to spend.
And
No
we can
one
get it.
wants to take it away
Okay.
from us.
And we could potentially even add to it.
It only, probably not.
Okay. Do something
But
else.
not from the, right,
Okay.
it only makes, the only difficulty is that it's harder for me to go in and say,
Ask for more.
we need new money over here when we haven't spent the money over there.
I don't
That
disagree.
said,
Okay.
our current delegation is very kind to our village.
Yes.
So anyway,
Okay, so that's something that I feel like we need to have maybe 2 or 3 different options and plans of how planning and zoning would like to see that money spent, because I can see where that's just gonna go a different direction.
so we will put that on a future agenda and start that conversation.
And I would say next month's agenda.
Sure.
Ish, at least to get the ball, because I feel like that's what's,
Sooner than later.
right, because when you guys start it in January, February, we're already past that.
Okay.
So yes. That answers that.
Yeah, this money would not need to be budgeted because it's
When's the soonest it can be spent?
as soon as we tell the Department of Natural
Like,
Resources.
is it after July, like, OPWC's, you can't spend it till July 1st?
No,
So
the
like
bill,
that-
the bill
okay.
has passed. It's past its 90 days. It's an appropriation. It becomes effective immediately.
Okay,
It
cool.
is simply the paperwork. So the bureaucracy is that,
I haven't seen it yet. So, yeah, no, I'm.
yeah, I got an email
Okay,
3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I forwarded it to Eric. I reminded him about it today. He needs to, I mean, what we need to do is tell them what we're going to spend it on with some level of detail. And so it will sit until we know how we want to spend it. And then after that, you know, the application goes through the Department of Natural Resources, the Office of Budget Management, into the controlling board, gets put on the controlling board agenda. Depending on the exact, 250,000 will be a director's sign off.
Right.
So like
Awesome.
4 months after we decide, probably.
Okay.
Okay. Playgrounds. So that's, we're gonna ask for $5,000 to go into an account.
On an annual basis?
And if we're allowed to ask for things to go in perpetuity, yeah.
I love perpetuity.
Then that would be best, right? The hope here is to build up a budget
Yeah.
for our aging playground so that when it really needs it, we have the money to do
Well,
something.
this is something that I know council, especially given sewer stuff from many years past, it's like, let's stop reacting, let's start being proactive. And in doing that, I think that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah. So yeah, and then again, if something breaks, then it's not, oh crap, what are we gonna do? It's, we're gonna have to draw into this, you know.
We've already
You
planned
don't
for
have to
this.
have an emergency
Right,
appropriation or.
right.
anything
It's already
like
sitting there. You can
that.
just
Sitting there.
pull it
I can
out
make the
because
mayor's
that's what the
job
fund is
easier.
used
Hey, we
for.
got money for this, already ready to go. Let's just
How fun would that be?
fix the swing. Maintenance.
All
We're
right,
gonna get there one day.
so that's that one. The second one being disc golf. The last discussion we had, if I recall, was that there are, 6 holes at Minerva France? And so the thought was to put 2 or 3 in to make a 9-hole course, see what kind of use it got over the next year or so. And then if there was a desire to expand to 18, then a future budget could do that. And if it wasn't getting the use then that folks hope and that we thought, then it would not be as significant of an expenditure. And so Eric's estimate is that it would cost around $2,800 for each hole. And so a $10,000 appropriation for disc golf would confidently install at least 2 holes. And then, you know, would leave funds there in that line in theory.
I don't know, the more I keep thinking, I keep questioning the need for the money for the disc golf. Because it does seem odd doing 2, because that's really not gonna be a course. And that one is like so small, seems like it's a putting course. To see people coming here, do that, and then going on just for 2 more. And then kind of even the bigger picture of where they're gonna be located in relationship to, you know, kind of people's properties and lawns. Because I know, yeah, the experts, theirs is gonna go here. When I play, my family mine's over here, and I'm having to go in the woods. So I think there needs to be even extra thought about truly placement
Okay.
for it because of like, and I know that map Lewis sent out a month or 2 ago, whatever that was. You know, it's still like that question of really kind of the back of people's lawns. Are they gonna go into fences? Are they gonna go into the ponds? And if we don't have, if money is a kind of question, that's one thing I kind of would like to have more further
So
discussions on.
I completely share 100% of your concerns and have had a lot of the same thoughts.
So
One
I
thing
have
I
a
would
second.
throw
Go
out,
ahead.
just 1 second, one thing I would throw out is if we don't request the funds, then there is no chance of anything happening. If we do request the funds and council decides to allocate the funds, that still doesn't mean that they have to move forward on building anything. So it would still, you know, ultimately be up to council. If we said we'd like to put 10 grand toward disc golf and then had folks, you know, take plans here and we elevate them, and if we decided to do that, or if council wanted to on their own, and ultimately say, we kind of think that 2 holes is not the best idea, and where would they go, and are they gonna hit people in the head, and we're not gonna do this, then there's $10,000 that sits, and council can then move that money, they can let it lapse, they
To
can,
the equipment recreation fund.
they could move it into the,
So, okay, so I know that you had said to see, maybe the 9-hole course, see if it gets used. How do you measure if it gets used? Like how do you know that?
I was gonna ask Dave, not that question, but has anybody seen if anybody's using the SIP?
They are.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question.
They actually are.
I'm not over there, I have no idea.
And no, that's the, so I think our previous discussions was adding 2 holes, because most courses are either 9 or 18.
right.
And I think that, like
Yeah.
you guys have mentioned, that it's kind of a putting thing. So I mean, at these ones, I would hope that we would choose ones that are maybe a little bit more complex and long. That way you can guide them away from, but not being in people's houses or towards people's houses.
But how close do they need, this
To
is,
be to their friends.
how close do they need to be to their friends? To where people are gonna realize that they're there or willing to, I know people walk to golf, like I'm not dumb.
They will, because it goes on
Okay,
free funded sites, like there's the map of Minerva France's disc golf. It's like I don't want to say hippie community, but when people are
Disc golf
passionate
enthusiasts.
about, when people are passionate about
That's
something
nice.
silly,
right.
like they put up a whole bunch of resources and time and money, and they're like, yeah, we do this thing, it's no money, it doesn't cost things, but they just pour their heart and soul into it, and I think that's kind of what these things are. And especially from all the people that I've seen and played with once, I went with Lewis to the course, and I was like, everyone's like, hey, how's it going? Everybody's nice, they're just throwing frisbees.
I mean, it is interesting, there'll be one person out there, but they've got 30 frisbees, and they're like, hey, you wanna try some? And, it's fun, but I think that, to your point, put the request out. If you
Yeah.
don't ask, they can't say yes. If they do say yes, we don't necessarily have to do it if we decide that we budgeted poorly, or, this isn't gonna work out, but if you don't ask now, they can't say yes for later. So I think, yes, put it in, and
I think
see where it goes.
for me, it's all about location.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with the fact that it has to make sense to where we're putting them, because I'm just gonna be blunt, I don't want the complaints.
Yeah.
I just don't.
You'll get them.
And I'm going to get them. I feel
Yeah.
like it needs to be extremely thought out, because not everybody's a professional. Would you want a golf, I understand it's a frisbee, but it's like hitting golf clubs into your window or something like that. I don't want people climbing over people's fences to try to get their thing, or getting bit by a dog trying to reach through. I just don't need it. That's just one headache I don't need.
And it's and are we doing it for Minerva Park, or are we doing it to bring people in?
Yes.
And it's why do we want to bring people in? Why do we want extra traffic?
And
Well-
some people don't.
Yeah.
No, most people don't. If you look at Facebook, this person's driving around and they look like they might be looking for the holes. So
These are all things, right? We can stop this conversation now by saying we don't think that we're not going to request any money be allocated, or we can request money be allocated so that this conversation can be had.
And council can continue that conversation there as well, and there's 3 of us here that are all there, and express the fact that people are using it. People definitely do like it. If it's planned out, if it's planned out right and we put them in the right spots, it might actually be a great thing. But to your comment, we know that people don't like people driving through here. If they're driving too slow, if they're doing this, they're on Facebook. So, you are inviting people into our neighborhood that maybe some people don't want. I'm not saying they're bad people, I'm just saying people in general, there's, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I feel like I'm pushing it.
So, and again,
So do we recommend it or do we not recommend it?
right, so the question, and so we can,
If you don't ask.
we can also rank our recommendations. So let's move on, we'll come back to this, and we'll move on to bat houses.
Yes, roll back, just roll back.
Do you know that dragonflies eat more mosquitoes than bats?
But they don't have houses.
But yeah, how do you, are
I'm
there,
okay with that.
But I'm thinking Tiffany might like the dragonflies.
Maybe
so what,
Can you add a dragonfly one for my house?
I don't know that they make dragonfly houses. If they do, I'm all for anything that's gonna help. Eric sent me a cool article the other day that the lack of bats has killed about 1,000 kids in the US in the past year. That because the bats are not killing the insects,
And people refuse to spray.
farmers have to use additional sprays on crops, and now kids are having sensitivities and there have been fatalities.
Or people refuse to spray and then they end up with West Nile.
Sounds
and then
like
they
big
die.
chemicals talking.
I'm being dramatic, I have no idea.
Anti-big chemicals,
My
right? The
friend's
bats.
sister got West Nile, not fun.
No.
She's like still in a nursing home.
Absolutely.
Just last year she got it.
Again, I understand both sides of it, there's nobody that, I get it, I absolutely get it,
So what
until
would
you get
be,
sick.
what would they be about asking for the budget, how much?
So here's the, if we ask for about $2,000, that would cover multiple bat houses plus their installation.
Who installs them?
If Chipper needs to rent equipment for something else, he could probably rent the diggers, or you can put them, if we have dead trees, we can clear some limbs off the dead trees and just mount them there.
Because we actually don't let our maintenance people use chainsaws up in the trees, just as an FYI, we hire it out. So 2,000's not gonna do this, is what I'm
So
telling you.
while they're hired out to do something else, you say, oh, in that tree, we just need three
You're
limbs.
saying it's gonna add.
Okay, Eric's suggestion, being that they cost $100 to $300 a piece, if we put,
Budgeting 1,700 apiece for.
then, if we bought 3 of them at 600, for a total of $600, then that would leave $1,400 for the installation. So I think that's not an unreasonable.
And if it's cost prohibitive to have them added to a dead tree, then we just don't have them added to a dead tree, and we just put in posts.
And so the thought is, I think the last budget that I looked at, there was like $8,000 a year allocated to mosquito spray. And so the thought is, and I get it takes one mosquito with West Nile and we spray. But if the bat houses could lead to one skipped spraying a year, then they pay for themselves in a couple of years. And they require, they're built out of cedar, they require no
Would
maintenance.
this go in that same budget as the sprayer, or this would need to be separate?
No, I think this would be separate.
Separate.
Yeah.
Because
It's not a service
contract contract
provider that's needed,
chemical
it's a.
and one's a building.
Yeah.
I'm staying out of this conversation, so this is all on you guys. You guys request what you want, do what you want, because I'm not a fan of bats.
Right. That's
I'm not inviting them in my house, and I just see it's another maintenance thing.
Well, and if they
What if we
have
build
a
their
place,
own house and they stay out of yours?
exactly, if they have a nice place to live, they don't want to go in your house, and so that's
I
an
don't see
additional.
them. As long as I know there's no bat house, I don't have to see them. Bats and snakes are my 2 things, sorry. I will kill a bug. I will
Item
do all that.
3, snake houses.
Snake houses?
Absolutely.
Jordan Road?
I will.
On Jordan Road only.
So our friends posted a picture of after the hurricane, and there was a snake there. I would just burn it down. I'd have been like, the hurricane took it out, like.
I think that bat house, when you look at the scheme of things, this is a pretty small investment that, we know that there is a vocal, if not significant population of the village who doesn't like spraying, who's looking for any other means. The thing that's better than spraying is not having as many mosquitoes, right? And so if we can find a way that we can invest once over a long term on a proven natural method to reduce the number of mosquitoes, yes, we still might find them with West Nile, but there still also might be less of them in general. And
I'm
so,
not arguing with you.
$2,000
I don't disagree with
and
you.
so
I just don't-
for $2,000 for a one-time purchase, we see what happens, and the problem is that there's not gonna be data that comes in on this, right?
Well,
You
it
can
might-
ask your neighbors if they feel like they've been getting bid as much next year.
I mean, there might be though, if we only spray it once per year and our average is.
Well,
4.
it will be how many tests did we not find?
But even if we budgeted just for the sake of understanding what it's gonna take to put one up to establish it, and then you can go, hey, that worked well, or it didn't.
Right.
We're not budgeting $10,000 of a failure.
So are we okay with requesting $2,000 for
I'm okay,
bat
for
houses?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a potential natural solution.
So we are asking for, so far, we have all agreed to ask for funds being added to the mulching fund, to put new mulch down at the playground. We're asking for the creation of a new line item that would be a recreational equipment maintenance and improvement fund, and to fund that at $5,000 this year, and please next year, and the next year, and the next year. Then we're asking for $2,000 to erect some number of bat houses. So our actual ask is $7,000 plus mulch right now.
Wait, how much are you doing for disc golf, I'm sorry?
Well, that's where we're headed.
We're still going on.
Is if, so
$7,000 plus mulch.
right now, out of what do we have, about a $3 million budget?
She writes this.
It's in my car. I actually have sheet.
Right now, we're requesting, $7,000 plus mulch. So trying to gain some perspective before we move back to disc golf. Do we want to include $10,000 for 2 disc golf holes as well, so that the conversation can continue? And that would have our total ask be almost certainly under $20,000.
I say yes.
To the Frisbee golf, let's see what council has to say, and if not, well, you can shoot it to other things like you wanted,
I mean, it's just like the bat house, at least for the Frisbee golf thing for me. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it would stink to have a concrete pad that you didn't use, but it's easy to take a pole out. It's not easy to take this building down. I mean, it's just kind of and it's a small expenditure. But I mean, I see both sides of it. That's where I'm always torn. It's like, do you want to bring more people in? You're like, no. But you're also like, don't you want people to see the beauty and majesty of this village? So you
Or do
can
you
attract
look,
people to it?
or do you look at it like, again, the disc golf is a little different, I get that. But the other part is, and you said it perfectly fine earlier, and you're not wrong. Minerva France has a great playground, and for us, we have to drive. But for those little kids that can go right across the street, they deserve to have a nice playground. So when mom and dad can look out their front window and see their kids swinging on their swing set, 90% of the reason they bought this house because I can watch my kids right there, they still deserve to have a nice playground for them to go to. So while we can't afford to go put a brand new one, we do need to maintain it. We absolutely do, because the more playgrounds, the better. And there is no one that will say this more than me. Get the kids out of the freaking basement. Go out there.
Yeah, and we absolutely, we know without a shadow of a doubt that we cannot build a new playground this year.
Oh, absolutely.
What we can do is start putting money in the cookie jar.
Because we know
so
it's
that-
coming.
Right, so that at some point we can, so.
Right. We want
So
to
that
have-
is for the parents, for those parents who say, this playground is not what I want it to be, we're saying, I know,
Right.
we're working on it, as
Right.
opposed to, we can't afford it.
Right. I mean, for those little kids that can go out there, that are old enough to go out there by themselves with parents sitting there, they can't, not every parent can just drop everything they're doing for 2 or 3 hours and take them over to Minerva France, so.
Okay. Do we want to rank these 3 requests, or do we just want to submit all 3 of them?
I just want to send it.
Okay.
I don't want to rank it.
And again, this will be up to council, and obviously, we've got 4 people who sit on the dais at council to be able to. What?
3.5 request, right? The mulch.
Yeah, because the mulch doesn't really count. I mean, the mulch is
It's part of the same request,
Yeah.
it's playground maintenance, we're just saying,
making sure it gets done.
you guys should start allocating money in every budget to
Is it?
handle this, because
We know it's coming.
why on earth is under the swing set
So it's,
a different line than under the tree when you're placing a mulch order?
so it's not in the playground maintenance, it should be in the mulching fund, so it's 4 requests,
Well,
3
it's-
with funds.
The problem is, it's not gonna go, it isn't gonna go that way. It's not gonna go in the mulching fund, because the mulching fund, we actually don't have a mulching fund.
Oh.
That would go in something completely different, because we pay landscapers to come do 90% of our mulching. And they aren't gonna do the playground, because it's different. They're not gonna come in and do just the mulching of that,
So
because
it needs its own specific.
it's probably, we could get a price for them to come out and do it, but my guess is, we just buy it in bulk for the playground, it's dropped off, and then maintenance goes and does this with it. My guess is it's probably quite a bit more expensive to have the other company do it, but we can check, but
Well, I guess.
I will work
Right,
on,
but at
I
the
will
same
work
time-
on with council, we just wanna make sure that wherever it ends up, we wanna make sure that it gets done.
Right, there's a purchase order that is made for mulch.
For
and if
mulching
you-
for
if
the
you-
playground.
Right, and if you
Absolutely.
added
I know
more
what you're-
mulch to that purchase order,
Yes, yes.
then that would be the way to do
And we
it.
don't, and right now, we're working with our landscape companies, just so you know, and maybe that's something that we can ask them, how much would you charge us to do it? But my guess is probably quite a bit more, because it's under $1,000 for us to do it with the regular mulch and them coming out and doing it and everything, because a lot of times we'll use our lifeguards to come help us at the time.
Yeah, which, I mean,
Let's get the kids to come out to the playground for a mulch spray.
I was gonna say, like, spreading
Right.
mulch at a playground is probably easier than spreading it around landscaping. 'cause
Oh,
you don't have-
absolutely,
you
because
know,
you gotta keep moving, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't, yeah.
That's why we don't do that, that's why we hire them to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have these 4, we'll call them requests. Just full send, I can give these to Eric and he will give them to Jeff.
Can you
and
give them to me
I can
and
give them
Eric?
to you and Eric.
Because I will probably see him first.
Okay.
I'll see him in the morning.
And then, yeah, so these will go to Jeff, who is preparing the full budget documents to go over with council. And like I said, we have 4 people in this room who are voices on council. I trust that you can all convey our conversations.
Can you please CC me on that as well, because I'll have to give a P&Z report.
Yes. I'll put this in a document tomorrow and I'll send it out to everybody, so that if anyone feels that I have not properly conveyed our feelings today, you can
Do we have
yell
to
at me.
officially vote on it, or can we just agree on it? I mean,
We're just gonna agree on it because it's not even right, this is going into an unofficial budget list to become an unofficial budget document, to become an official budget document, to be ultimately amended, changed. So,
So
yeah,
it's really just for our internal budgeting, it's not really any of.
yeah, this is,
any
yeah,
other purpose.
at this point, I'm considering that we're helping the fiscal officer out with budget prep.
I think we already talked about this goal before and made the recommendation to send it to council, and council's like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then we're like, how much? And it's like, let P&Z tell you how much, okay, thanks. And now we can tell,
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
government is grand.
So is there anything missing that we didn't discuss that you guys would like to discuss?
Any prep on next agenda? That's the only part I missed. I know it came up and I got lost.
You put this on something for next agenda. What's next agenda? What are we gonna talk about next?
Yeah, that's.
Meeting?
We're gonna talk about the 250,000 from the capital bill and how we might envision spending money on, how we would prioritize spending money on walking trail improvements throughout the village.
Yes.
Tree surveys?
And so I will ask Eric before our next meeting to put together a list of things that we know are needed. I know there's some bridge work that needs to be done, which are walking trails. I know that there's always some trails that need repaved or patched. That's walking trails. I know there's always talk of expansion. That's walking trails. Sidewalks are walking trails. Parking lots are walking trails. If you're going from one side to the other, like everything's a walking trail if you walk on it. And so that's why we chose those words.
I would love to see if we could do like a priority list, like Jordan Road being number 1. Here's, the pros and cons of doing it, if we just get it done, because maybe there is a different way to get it done that I am not thinking about. Or, I know that there's the pool pathway that people want to get from this side to this side. There is, I personally can think of like 4 or 5 that we have talked about, not including, like you just said, there's some bridges that are in need of some work. There's so many different things. We got one of them fixed over, but it's a short-term fix that was bubbling up.
Yeah, pavement.
That seems to be doing well right now, so we'll see after the spring.
I'm convinced those things will survive a nuclear apocalypse.
Well, I think we kind of talked about it, but it was just under the bridge. We're gonna,
Oh, Roxon, the riprap by the tunnel is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
The pre-manufactured tunnel that,
Yeah.
because you do definitely have some
Erosion and.
erosion, for sure.
So when that creek gets
Oh, yeah.
really rough.
I mean, that could be some funding maybe for
Yep.
the 250 to secure the walking path so you don't have to maintain it or rip it out and put it back in. I don't know.
So I think those are all,
Stabilize the walking
I think those are all great ideas that I feel like this is the body that wants to take on some of those bigger things, I feel like this is a great one for us too, because number one, you were the ringleader in getting that fund. And I know that there is already discussion of it. So it would be nice to get the perspective here of prioritizing what walking paths you guys would, or, you know, what improvements and what walking paths or whatever it may be from this body.
That parkland connector, like anything can, you know.
Anything that connects, yeah.
Yeah, anything that connects.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Makes, you know, people's lives easier from whether it's the, you know, old new section to the legacy section or parkland, wherever we're at, making that.
I feel like they all need done, it's just what makes the most sense first, second, or what connects to another project. And that's where I was going with the lakes, and I don't want to get too far into that, but I feel like as much as I want that one to be first, I don't feel like that one's going to end up being able to be first. Do we save the funds and take the chance on not being able to get more? So I feel like that's why it just needs to be a big conversation. But I would really like Eric to be here for that, because I know he has some insight on a lot of those things going on with the lakes and the sidewalks for Minerva Lake Road, the potential, potential sidewalks for Minerva Lake Road eventually, and things like that, so.
So let's look at the next meeting.
Yes.
November 20th would be the third, and Thanksgiving is late this year, so it's not, that does not fall on the same week as Thanksgiving. That's our third Wednesday. If November 20th looks like a good meeting, that's also after the election, obviously, so we would know about the CODA,
I think it's perfect.
which, you know, that will have significant impact on the discussions we're having. If that sales tax goes through, there's gonna be dedicated funds
What
flowing
issue
to
is
the
that?
village.
47.
Link us.
Okay, why have I not seen one?
I saw
I
one
Googled
ad.
it.
saw
They're,
I've seen
because
one-
they're
I've seen
doing
one-
a terrible
one
job
person
and they're
took
just
it to figure out
assuming that it's
that's
going to
what's
pass, and I
Yeah,
don't think
I
they're
heard.
going to be
I'm
successful.
surprised there isn't more information on that.
I Googled it trying to actually figure it out for like 20 minutes, and I actually knew what I was looking for and could not find it. And I was like, how can I not? I'm like, it's
How's it gonna
not.
pass when no one knows anything
Yeah.
about it?
That's, yeah, it's, they're not,
Yeah, it makes me, but I would agree with you, the 20th I think is great, because we will be past that point of if it passes or not, because again, that's been a huge assumption in here, and I'm not saying that it's not accurate, but the huge assumption is it's gonna pass, and this is all this wonderful stuff, and if it doesn't pass,
part of it makes our lives easier, right? Because there
Absolutely.
are some of these things that are like, we have to do this if it passes.
Google Food was weak.
I was joking with that, and it was too.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to write up these form recommendations. I'm going to send them to everyone tomorrow. We're going to meet on, you don't have to reply unless I got something wrong. We're going to meet again on Wednesday, November 20th. We're going to ask Eric to help us put together a list of anything that's in the hopper or getting ready to be in the hopper that could be classified in any way as a walking trail. We're gonna bring our own ideas about things that we would like to see done as far as stuff you walk on in the village. And then we're going to see if we can't start to prioritize things in the hopes that we can issue an official recommendation to council on how to spend these free monies.
Okay, and I'm gonna do a little blurb for this. Tomorrow night, at what time? 6:30, 7? I can't even remember. 7 o'clock, I don't even know. Mike Flickinger will be here, and he will be having a meeting about the Minerva Lake Road potential street project. And I say that because there is no project if we don't get funding. There is potentially I don't know if they're gonna talk about the potential of sidewalks, because again, that is not part of the project, but it's the dream.
That part of the dream is part of that Dakota levy, or is that totally separate?
It's a lot of that, yes.
Okay.
But we've also gotten $850,000 towards walking paths, potentially. What is that one really for? The 850?
That doesn't exist yet, right?
It doesn't exist yet.
So it's nothing,
We're not even gonna
it's
talk
nothing
about it,
until it
okay.
exists.
When is that supposed to be? I thought end of November.
It's the federal government, so
Okay, so we're not-
it doesn't exist until you've got money in your hand.
So that one is, so assuming that we got that one, there are a couple different buckets of where that particular sidewalk would come in. But again, tomorrow night, that is what that meeting is for. He is going to show drawings in which we have not gotten personally here. He is going to give an idea of what lane might be closed, all the logistics of this potential project, because people are already starting to ask questions. But it is not, I don't want to call it a dream because it needs done. There's sewer work being done, there's street work being done, there's not sidewalks, there's curb and gutter going in, potentially. So anybody that wants more information about that project, it is tomorrow night. So going along with what you had said, if you want to be, and even if you don't go, I actually shouldn't say that, it is probably not going to be recorded because it's not a regular, it's not going to be live streamed, it's not going to be anything like that. I may have the recorders on, I believe the recorders will be on. But I don't know for sure, because again, when people start talking, you can't hear anybody anyways. A lot of times we do try to get at least Mike's information so we personally can go back and listen to it as well. But all it is it's for residents to come in, and he's just going to give a brief overview of what that project could potentially look like. So again, I would highly recommend anybody that can come for a little bit to get an idea of what's going on with that project. That way, if it does come here at some point, you guys will kind of be like a step up and know exactly what we're talking about. Where, when, how. That project would not start until late 2025.
Because those things are hard because of budgeting reasons and trying to get the funding for them.
Correct.
I mean, you got to get the grant writer to put the stuff together, and
Correct.
you have to it's so weird.
Yeah, we're tens of thousands of dollars into these projects already, and we have nothing to show, like, other than the fact that these are what we would like to see done. So that's kind of where we are with that, and the lake is no different. The lake is, we need about $4 million to move forward, but
That's last year's money.
right?
Last year's.
So that's kind of, we're nowhere near ready for a project, but there is discussion of it. There's great detail of discussion of it, but it's all discussions at this point.
But that's not being discussed tomorrow night.
With the concept.
Only it's not Minerva Lake Road.
Right, only Minerva Lake Road, just trying to clarify.
100%.
No, it could potentially, it'll be my
It may be a
filter,
little
so if
bit
somebody
better.
asks questions, he will answer those questions, but it is based on Minerva Lake Road.
Okay.
I have a project, we've been waiting on federal money 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Checks in the mail, though.
Is it?
We're getting close. We're almost there. Any day now.
All right, anything else?
That's what they tell me.
Any further business? We're adjourned.